everyone watched the game. We know the story. It's just becomes more incredible each and every step along the way. But to get the full grasp of the journey for me, besides watching the games, I got to connect with somebody. And the best person to do so is Melissa Treebwasser from Frogs Today. Melissa, how you doing?
Yeah, that's, I mean, it's when you see the tweets that are just the random letters, like that's how my brain has been for the last like 36 hours. I've got puffy eyes. I'm like pale. I haven't slept. Like it's in sports is I am experiencing the best feeling in sports. Like it's unbelievable. It's been an incredible last few days.
I have to admit, I did when it came down to it. I was going back and forth on my prediction, and I went back and forth. And maybe this is going to teach me to go with my kind of gut, but at the same time, there's definite logic there. I picked it as a close game. I took the points. I gobbled up those points, and I said, I'll take the points. But I did. I just, I guess I went with the conventional wisdom of everybody else. And when it push came to shove, I went with Michigan. But the speed and space equation from both an offensive standpoint and a defensive standpoint in limiting Michigan's wide receivers, I did really like that matchup. You obviously did. And maybe we can start there in regards to what issues TCU gave Michigan again in space with all that speed, and not just on offense, but in the defensive secondary.
Well, I think that the play of the game was the first defensive play, and that is when Donovan Edwards broke off that 50-plus yard run, and Bud Clark chased him down from behind. And I think if Edwards gets into the end zone there, it's really easy. Now, I don't want to say to unravel because this TCU team has proven that they are not afraid of anything, but that sets the tone. That gives all the doubters, all of the haters, all of the national media, see, we told you so, right? Like that's the moment. And then maybe that puts a seed of doubt in TCU's mind. But when Bud Clark chases him down and then they run the Philly special on fourth down, Michigan does, and TCU says, "Oh no, you don't. We are the trick play team. We are the fun team." Then I think that kind of set the tone for TCU of like, "Hey, we can play with these guys, and they haven't seen speed like we have on defense. Imagine how they're going to feel when we roll our offense out there." And I think that's when the Frogs knew and the Frog fans knew, hey, this isn't going to go the way that everybody expects it to go, and the Frogs can handle with this. And Johnny Hodges said it after the game, one of my favorite post-game quotes. He talked about, hey, when they were running trick plays on their first drive, we knew we had this in the bag. We knew that they didn't think they could just line up and beat us like they talked about all week. They were scared. They were afraid, and they thought they had to pull out their bag of tricks, and that's when we knew that we had this. So yeah, I mean, defensively, you saw it in D. Winters jumping routes, you saw it in Bud Clark jumping routes for pick sixes. You saw it in what they did, the way that they really bothered Michigan's award-winning offensive line with the run fits coming out of the 3-3-5. They had no idea where the extra defender was coming from that entire game. And after that 50-yard run, Edwards averaged just over 3 yards a carry, I think. It was a really, really impressive performance by guys that are a lot bigger than they get credit for, but guys that are a lot faster than you're going to see up and down the Big Ten defensively. And then on offense, I mean, this was not TCU's cleanest game offensively. They didn't have Kendre Miller for almost the entire second half. Amari DeMarcado was running by people. He is 37 years old, and he was running by people. And what Quentin Johnson did on that shallow cross, taking it to the house from, I think, 74 yards, just untouched. I think he broke one tackle near the line of scrimmage, and then he was just gone, ran right by me. That was like the moment I was like, oh my gosh, we might actually win this thing. It was a testament to who this TCU team is, to what strength and conditioning coach Kaz Kazadi has done all season long, preparing the guys for games like this. And I was interviewing one of the defensive backs earlier in the week and asked him, I was like, hey, TCU's team speed is, he's like, we can contain it. They're fast. We're fast too. And he was so dismissive of that. And the Michigan players were a little dismissive all week long, to be honest. That's kind of when you started to think, yeah, I don't think they understand what they're in for. And pretty clearly evident early on was that TCU not only was going to be able to play with Michigan, but they had them on their heels.
Yeah, they had them on their heels. And even though it turned out to be a close game of sorts, TCU was in control. The Michigan had the opportunities, and they had the last drive with the ball in their hands to score a touchdown and win the game. But TCU made a tremendous stop there. So on one hand, yeah, it was a close game and it went down to the final possession, but TCU was never they were never out of control of this game.
Well, that's the other thing is that I don't think people gave a ton of credit to TCU for. There was nothing that Michigan was going to do to them on the scoreboard that they hadn't seen before. Oh, you're gonna get up early? Okay, did that against SMU and had to hang on late. TCU had fallen behind. Okay, what do we know about double-digit comebacks in the second half? No big deal. If you're going to play in a close game, I mean, think back to the Baylor game. This team has been through the ringer and been through adversity, and I think in a lot of scenarios that you think, you and I were kind of chatting before, or you were chatting at the beginning of the broadcast, is that you go with conventional wisdom. You go with conventional wisdom more than any other sport at any other level. College football has the ability to buck conventional wisdom because heart and motivation and bulletin boards mean a lot to 18 to 22-year-old kids in a way that the rest of us don't necessarily, ascribe to anymore. So yeah, I mean, I think I never when TCU was up 14-0 and 21-3, there was never a part of me that thought, oh, this one's over. You knew Michigan was going to fight back. That is a big, physical, talented team, and they're a second half team for a reason because they can just bully you, especially in the trenches on both sides of the ball. So you knew that they were going to punch back. But the thing is that every time Michigan gave you their best shot, TCU answered. I mean, yeah, that score got a little bit tighter, but when the Frogs needed a score, it was Amari DeMarcado breaking off a big run. It was Darius Davis with a 31-yard punt return. It was Quentin Johnston taking a 3-yard pass 74 yards to the house. And so Michigan hadn't had to play in a lot of these games. All TCU did all season long was play in these types of games. And so there was, and the pro stadiums are awesome for a photographer because there's so much room behind the benches. And so I would just, and they kick you out really quickly at college stadiums behind there. But when you're on the college football playoffs, you could be wherever you want, listening to whatever you want to listen. And there was zero panic. Nobody was flustered. Nobody was getting in each other's faces on that TCU sideline. The only time I saw an emotional reaction was on that final drive when Mark Perry came within about 6 inches of having a game-sealing interception. Max Duggan, had a little we'll say a gosh darn it moment. Maybe it was a little more colorful than that. But I think that was the only time that you saw any level of any type of frustration.
Phenomenal story that we continue to follow. And the best way to do that is to get the information and the insight from Melissa Triebwasser. Catch her on Frogs Today. We watch the games, of course, here at the Voice of College Football, but Melissa provides just tremendous insight into the player profiles and everything going on there. So catch it at Frogs Today. So as we spin this forward to the next matchup, I'm sure you saw Georgia and Ohio State. They had an epic battle as well. It was a great day of college football, two tremendous high-scoring, high-flying games, and now we get a Georgia TCU matchup. Not many people are going to remember a rematch of the 2016 Liberty Bowl. There you go.
Yeah, I was there for that one too.
Very nice in Memphis there. So is there any concern that TCU is going to have difficulty getting off the deck? Not psychologically, like they're not resilient mentally to keep fighting and getting back, but physically, that this game took a toll more so than it would on what we would assume would be a deeper roster with Georgia.
I'm not really worried about that, to be honest. I think that after playing 11 straight weeks against Power 5 competition, they had 3 weeks off. They were so anxious to play. And you hear that time and time again during bowl season for the teams that play in the New Year's Six is that, by the media availability Thursday morning, you could tell those guys were like done talking and ready just to roll out the ball and go for it. And now you've got 10 days. And so other than Kendre Miller, who was banged up in that game, but has said very clearly afterwards, I'm playing next week. This team walks away pretty healthy, pretty, worn down, sure, from playing a physical team. But with what Kaz Kazadi has done, with what Sonny Dykes has done in nutrition and recovery, with just the whole way that this program is built, I think there's going to be absolutely plenty of time for those guys to get what they need, rest and recover wise, to get back into the grind of a week of practice and for preparation. And I think that they'll be fine physically getting up off the mat. And more importantly, I think they'll be fine mentally and emotionally. It was really interesting. I was talking with one of the national writers on Saturday, and I kind of asked him after the game, like, At what point, because he's a pretty Sam. I'll give Sam Khan a shout out for The Athletic. I love Sam. Sam's done an incredible job telling these stories of TCU all season long, and he was unbelievable this week. But it's kind of said, like, at what point did you feel like TCU legitimately had a shot to win this game? And he said, Michigan was all business all week. It was silent on the buses. They didn't do any of the fun team activities. It was all, we're here to win a game so we can go play Georgia or Ohio State for national championship. And TCU did a really good job balancing that of, hey, most of you guys, I think there's only 5 or 6 guys on that roster that played in a bowl game, period. So most of these guys have never had this experience. And so it was that balance of, we want you guys to enjoy it. You worked your tails off. You fought, you battled, you overcame to get to this point. You're going to enjoy the experience. But also, hey, we're here to win a football game, play for national championship. And so I think where they are mentally and emotionally is a really good balance of appreciating and enjoying the moment, but realizing the job's not done. Sonny Dykes has said time and time again that this is probably his favorite team he's ever coached at any level in all of his years of coaching, because of how much they like each other, how unselfish they are, the sacrifices that they're willing to make. There was not a single guy late for a meeting. There was not a single issue with missed curfew all night long. Even Saturday night, you worry a little bit because he kind of said, go out and have some fun, boys. But don't do anything that's going to cost you an opportunity to play in the national championship. And I mean, nothing. There was nothing that came out after Saturday night where you think 1 or 2 of those guys might get in a little bit too much trouble, having a little too much fun. They love each other. They have fun. They celebrate their success, but they're not done yet. And so I think that the mentality of this team was, hey, this was great. This was awesome. We're going to enjoy this tonight. But then tomorrow we're not done. We've got one more game. And Max Duggan said so after. This was not the goal. This was the next step. And we're here to finish the job. So I think that this is all that they've ever wanted, was to play for a national championship. TCU hasn't done so since 1938. And that opportunity in front of them, I expect them to take full advantage.
I think we've learned from Super Bowl history, especially early Super Bowl history, that there would typically be one team that would be laser focused, locked down, but way too early, too serious, too early for too long, not decompress, not allowing themselves to just ease into the work and then get to the point where they could be full throttle at kickoff, and then the other team would be more balanced, and we saw the results there if that plays into it. I'm not a psychology expert, but I got to figure that if you have faith in your leadership in the locker room and what kind of culture you have, then you allow everyone to have fun when you're not doing football related activities, watching film, going through meetings, and obviously practice. And otherwise you let them decompress and have fun.
I mean, listen, I'm a high school teacher. If there's something I know, it's the psychology of teenagers, right? And that's what most of these rosters are made up of. And you absolutely can over prepare. Like, that's 100% a real thing. And so you're right. It's being able to strike that balance. And Sonny Dykes, it's my favorite thing to describe this turnaround in the season is just like, it's the vibes, man. Like, the vibes could not be more different between Sonny Dykes and Gary Patterson. And the vibes around the program could not be more different. And there is something to be said, like you said, for having faith in the guys on the guy in the locker next to you, having faith in the leadership of your program, having faith throughout the administrative building. Everybody wants to win and be successful, but at the same time, like, they're willing to give space for people to figure it out a little bit. There is implicit trust in the scaffolding from Victor Bashini, the chancellor, to the new president that was just installed, down to Jeremiah Donati, down to Sonny Dykes. These guys have a plan. They have a foundation, but they appreciate that everybody was hired to do their job, and they let them cook. This isn't like some of these bigger blue blood programs like Texas, where there's going to be a lot of meddling from the outside. This is, hey, I hired you to do a job. Go do your job, man. And that's been the mantra for the TCU players. It's the 1 of 11 cliche. It's that if you do your job and the guy next to you does his, and the guy next to him does his, then at the end of the day, we're going to be in a good position, more often than not in that fourth quarter. And we've seen that big Donovan Edwards run. It's one linebacker's a little bit too amped up, and he did his job just a little too excitedly, and that's what kind of broke it free. But there was somebody there behind him doing his job to make sure that it was a big play, but it wasn't a big touchdown. And that's the way that this group has worked all season long. And there's something to be said, again, just for having a locker room that likes each other. There's no oh, you didn't do this or you didn't do that between the offense and the defense, or you put us in a bad position, or Max, you threw an interception, or Darius Davis, you let that ball deflect off your hands. It's, hey, next play. Next play. And if you walk up and down that sideline during the games, all you're hearing is coaches and players are like, hey, next play, next play, next play. There's no give up, and there's no quit, and there's no animosity on that 130-man roster. And that is the rarest thing in any level of sports, I think.
Melissa, Georgia's defense faced in the regular season two what I would consider elite offenses in Oregon, Tennessee. They did the job. They shut them down. They took care of business. But for the first time, they got exposed against Ohio State. Now, TCU and Ohio State's offenses are not extremely similar in many ways, but from a talent standpoint and speed standpoint, you can certainly make that comparison right there. And although Max Duggan is a much more accomplished runner and willing runner, CJ Stroud actually brought his shoulder down and took on some hits and did what he had to do to try to win a football game. So, and was able to be successful doing that. So there's got to be a level of optimism, hope, expectation based on the skill sets and the speed of the offense versus a Georgia defense that doesn't seem as daunting.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like TCU fans were all hoping that field goal was going to go through at the end. You know, I think we like the Ohio State matchup quite a bit more than the Georgia matchup for obvious reasons. Ohio State, TCU this year specifically, even though the talent advantage is very much on Ohio State's side, I think that matchup would have been a very entertaining game, and you would have probably seen something like you saw in one of those two games this weekend. But I can guarantee you TCU's not going to that Georgia game scared. You know, they're not afraid of anybody, legitimately. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't recognize that's a really dang good Georgia team on the other side, and they've got pros on both sides of the ball. But, yeah, I mean, I think you can throw a little bit on that Georgia defense. C.J. Stroud proved that. And, C.J. Stroud and Max Duggan were both in New York as Heisman finalists. And so both of those guys have a similar skill set when it comes to what they can do with the offense, directing an offense. But like you said, Max Duggan is a better runner than C.J., more willing runner. And so I think that he only had about, 54 yards was his total against Michigan, but he didn't need it, and he had the hard yards. Let me just tell you, the first time that it was 3rd and 1 down near the goal line, and they ran a QB sneak, I think all of us kind of looked around like, oh, thank God they learned that lesson, right? So I think that Garrett Riley had a great game plan for Michigan. I trust he'll have a great game plan for Georgia as well. That Georgia defensive line, that Michigan defensive front, probably very similar. I don't think the Georgia corners are quite as big as Michigan's, and so I think that there will be some opportunities and some openings. And Duggan had his worst statistical game of the season against Michigan, and the 2 interceptions were both deflections, so it's hard to blame him for those. But he wasn't super accurate. He was making the right decisions pretty much every single play, Garrett Riley said. He just wasn't able to quite finish the plays, and some of that was on him and some of that was on the receivers. I expect him to play at a little bit of a higher level against Georgia next week. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough. I think that the TCU defense can match up well with the Georgia offense. So it may be one of those things where it comes down again to interceptions or fluky plays or the ball bouncing or maybe a big special teams play. If you can move the ball against the Bulldogs, if you're TCU, then you're going to have a shot. You're just going to need something to go your way to pull off an upset. It's almost a 2-touchdown spread for a reason, right? But I mean, I think that if you're Sonny Dykes, that's kind of right where you want it to be.
Well, watching the two teams in recent weeks, I don't think it's a 2-touchdown spread. Vegas, it takes them a long time to kind of move off their evaluation of teams. Sure. Ohio State would have probably been an 8, 9, 10-point favorite, something like that. And I don't know that there's that much separation between those teams. And we know what they thought of Michigan versus TCU. Sure. Correct me if I'm wrong here, because obviously I watched every play of the game, but I don't know if my recollections going to be anywhere close to yours, of course.
I have no idea how much I remember. I blacked out for portions of that game. It was I missed. I didn't even know that they were reviewing targeting for a solid 60 seconds at the end of that game because I was crying in the arms of Spirit, the Fiesta Bowl mascot. It was just so I'm supposed to be a professional journalist, right? And I'm down there doing my job, but the tears are just coming down uncontrollably because I'm doing my job, but at the end of the day, I'm a horned frog too, and so it was just that dichotomy of be professional, but also I want to soak in the moment a little bit too, right? I earned that.
Oh, so Michigan scrambling around, they throw that crazy pass and done all that, and you immediately game over.
Yeah. I just like that, like I didn't even like there wasn't a moment where it was like, oh, I'm gonna cry now. It was like, oh no, the tears are coming down, and the mascot breaks the number one rule in mascotting. And he comes up and he's like, hey, those are happy tears, right? And I was like, yeah. And he just like gives me this big hug. And there's a great photo if you follow me on Twitter of me like with just tears in my eyes and a little selfie with Spirit. It was fun. So yeah, so I had no idea what was happening. And then because the players had celebrated, and then I saw it get quiet, and Sonny Dykes is like out in the middle of the field, and I'm like, oh no, what happened? And so then I was like, oh, they're reviewing. I bet it's a targeting, and then they start showing the replays. And to me, it didn't look like targeting, but I know Michigan fans feel otherwise. Anyways, back to your original point. Sorry to derail the conversation, but that's where I was in that moment.
I think I was headed toward. Oh, so by the way, everybody, you got Melissa's Twitter handle right there. I follow Melissa, but I missed that particular tweet. Of course,
Go
if you
back and
follow
find it.
enough
It's
people, I'll
adorable.
have to go back there and look, and
Yeah,
everybody else should
delightful little moment.
as
Yeah.
well. I was going to the point of, based on my recollection of the game, TCU's offensive line protected Max Duggan. I don't remember him being harassed that much in the pocket. CJ Stroud had great protection against Georgia. Georgia's pass rush may not be what people think it is.
Yeah, Max, that to me again was one of the big keys early is when you started to notice, hey, he's got time. And give the Michigan secondary a ton of credit because even when he had time, it was hard for him to find guys breaking open. But yeah, I mean the TCU's offensive line has been much maligned for most of the last several years, and rightfully so. They have been at times bad, and early this season too. I mean they struggled a little bit. I mean against Texas Tech, against Texas, even early on against SMU. Duggan was, being sacked 4 or 5 times a game against defensive fronts that were solid, but that they should be able to handle their own. Over the last several weeks of the season, I think this is a whole new offense and a whole new defense. It takes time for these players to make those adjustments. And I think what you have now is 5 guys that, knock on wood, have started every single game together. That is huge in college football to avoid injuries on the offensive front. They know what their job is. They execute their job. They've got a great timing and a great rhythm with Max Duggan behind him. And even when Max was pressured, I mean, like I said, he was not his best statistical game. But when you think back to one of the biggest plays of the game was his touchdown pass to Tay Barber. And he is off his back foot, falling away out of the pocket, being chased down. And he manages to kind of get that pass off to Tay Barber, who runs it in for the touchdown. The exact same play, according to my good friend Parker Fleming, Stats of War on Twitter. If you're not following him as well, I got to give him a shout out. What he does with statistical breakdowns, outstanding for TCU and others. And then they ran the exact same play to Quentin Johnson, and Georgia did the same thing. They saw something in that pass rush they knew they could take advantage of, and they were able to execute that vision both of those times. So, yeah, I mean, again, the Georgia defense is the Georgia defense, right? Like you have to say it with that kind of seriousness. But I think that TCU's offensive line has played really, really well over the last couple of weeks, and they have a chance once again to kind of to lock it down and give Duggan time. And if they can give him time, I mean, there's not many quarterbacks out there in the world that you trust more to make something out of nothing or make a big play in a big moment than Max Duggan. Again, CJ Stroud's a Heisman finalist. Well, shoot, so is Stetson Bennett 4. So they're gonna, it's gonna be 2 guys that are known for overachieving, that have been doubted, that just keep showing up time and time again, despite the fact that everybody tries to take their job away, right? From fans to coaches to recruiting to all of that. So yeah, I mean, it's going to come down very likely, and you kind of hope it does as a college football fan, right? To one of those guys stepping up in that spotlight and making a big play. I just happen to hope that it's Max, not Stetson.
All right, folks, guess what? TCU's a heavy underdog. Big surprise there. We've seen it all season. So what's new? It's just against Georgia this time. Melissa Triebwasser, you see her Twitter handle there and at Frogs Today as well. Any particular stuff you want to highlight in regards to what's going on at Frogs Today?
Yeah, I think our coverage this past week was unbelievable. We had several of us down there for media day. There's such great stories up and down this TCU roster. You can look at the talent, but when you get to know these kids as people too, it's unbelievable. Just this human beings, great characters, great personalities. And so what we've been doing on social, highlighting some of that and the stories that have been written has been really good. We'll have a full crew out in LA as well. I'm very excited. I am a Californian. And so making that drive down south to see a bunch of purple people is going to be a lot of fun. It reminds me a lot of I did this for the Rose Bowl, 12 years ago too. So again, just the symbiosis that the season has had is kind of unbelievable. So yeah, I'm really excited about what we're doing and the coverage that we're bringing. We'll be doing a live show, I think, from the alumni tailgate, like we did for the Fiesta Bowl, which was really, really fun. So check out our YouTube channel, check out what we're doing on Instagram, Twitter, and of course, RogersTV.com. This would be a really good time to subscribe if you're not already, if you want to follow the journey of a huge underdog, a true David coming out of nowhere to rise up and take on the powers of college football. We've beaten a Pac-12 team this year, though barely a Pac-12 team in Colorado. We've beaten a Big Ten team, and now we get to take on the SEC. So I'm really excited to see what we get to do and be a part of the coverage of a national championship game as a member of TCU Media. Holy cow, can't believe I just said that.
It is something else. First time since 1938 that would be achieved, regardless of what the final outcome is on national championship Monday night.
Yeah.
It's been a remarkable story and remarkable run, no doubt about that.
TCU has already won, and the fans can say that, and the university can say that. I can promise you the players don't feel like their job's done, but the rest of us know that just getting to this point, lifting that $2.2 million Fiesta Bowl trophy, that $1.2 million football Saturday night was what that's going to do long-term and big picture for TCU as a university. You can't overstate it. I mean, the Rose Bowl put TCU on the map nationally. The Fiesta Bowl and playing in the College Football National Championship might change the fortunes of this university in a way that we never could have anticipated. It's crazy what these opportunities do for schools, not just football programs.
That is a great point. And of course, it's also important what you just mentioned. The fans can think whatever they want, rejoice, celebrate, forget about the next game, whatever. The players, they need to be focused on the next game. And as long as that's occurring, and I'm sure it is, then they should be able to acquit themselves well. I'll put it that way. We have no idea what's going to happen, and I will not hold it against them or in any way put it past them in pulling off another upset.
Yeah, it's really, like I said, going into the Michigan game, I don't expect us to win, but I won't be surprised if we do. Sure. I mean, I'm not going to sit there and say, oh yeah, I have total confidence that TCU is going to beat Georgia Monday night. But you know what? If it's the Horned Frogs holding up that national championship trophy late into the wee hours Tuesday morning, nothing would shock me at this point. Nothing would shock me. If you think I was crying Saturday night, can't even imagine what I'd be feeling Monday night.
She's going to blow up Twitter with another crying video, possibly.
Very possible.
Melissa, we appreciate you, and don't be surprised if I track you back down for another X's and O's breakdown. But if you're too busy, I just want to say congratulations and continue to enjoy the journey, and I'm sure you will. And we will talk to you soon.
Absolutely. And now, I'll be happy to come on anytime. The more I can talk about TCU playing in a national championship game, the better.